there are many parts that make us who we are, right? Let's say, broadly, we have body, guf, right? We have, whatever, it doesn't matter, nefesh, havahamis, animal soul, nefesh alekis, yeah? Now, just by the way, this is important. It's not necessarily crucial for what we're talking about today, but it's relevant and it's a very important thing to be aware of. It's something that people often misunderstand. The Rebbe talks in Tanya about the fact that we have these two kings fighting to control the city, right? The city is the body, and then there's the animal soul and the godly soul, the nefesh habahamis, nefesh elokis, that each one wants to control the body, like two kings fighting over a city. That doesn't look like what we would generally think of as two kings fighting over a city. It's not the nefesh habahamis wants to control the body and the nefesh elokis is trying to, hip and shoulder the nefesh habahamis out of the way and take over the body. That's not the way it works. It doesn't look like that at all. Does anybody know what's wrong with that picture? What's wrong with that picture is something, a very big detail, which is that the Alter Rebbe says much later on in Tanya, in the Lamed Zayin, maybe, I think, thereabouts. The Alter Rebbe talks about the fact that when we do mitzvahs, we're not just refining our bodies and the world around us, we are also refining our nefesh habahamis. Why? Because the nefesh elokis cannot do a mitzvah without going through the nefesh habahamis. The nefesh elokis does not have the hardware to interact with the body. The nefesh habahamis, the animal soul, is the life force of the body, period. The thing that makes the body be alive is the nefesh habahamis. The thing that drives the body is the nefesh habahamis. The entity, the place where, let's say, the experience actually occurs is in the nefesh habahamis. The nefesh elokis, in order for the nefesh elokis to get the body to do a mitzvah, it has to go through the nefesh habahamis. The nefesh habahamis manages and controls the body. It keeps the body alive and manages it. So if the nefesh elokis wants to get the body to do something, it has to go through the nefesh habahamis to get the body to do it. So every time you do a mitzvah, every time we do a mitzvah, not only are we elevating the thing that we use and the body, but the nefesh habahamis, because the nefesh habahamis is part of the process just like the body is. Can't do anything. The nefesh elokis cannot interact with the body directly. It can only go through the nefesh habahamis. So now that doesn't mean that mashal of two kings trying to control a city is not correct, but if we want to be more specific about what that looks like, let's say, for example, if there's a city and there's a king who is, the king of the city, of the kingdom, the country, whatever it is, and there's another king who wants to come and take control of the city, but let's say that this new king who wants to come and take control of the city knows that the residents of this city, the people who live there, they love the current king. And if I come in and I get rid of that king, I kick him out, kill him, whatever it is, and take over, no one's listening to me. It's not going to work. So what would that king do if he was clever? He would find a way to infiltrate, to manipulate the king, to get the king to run the city the way that he wants, to his benefit. So now the second king is controlling the city, is in charge of the city, but can only effectively exert that control by going through the first king. Right? Another maybe mashal would be if someone wants to I mean, what happens if someone wants to hijack a plane, right? You don't have to be a pilot in order to hijack a plane. You just need to be able to hold a gun to the pilot's head and then you can hijack the plane, right? Someone can hijack a plane without being able to fly the plane as long as they can coerce or manipulate the person who does know how to fly the plane into flying it the way that they want. That's what this looks like. The Nefesh HaBahamis the Nefesh HaBahamis is the life force of the body and is the management system of the body. It's the operating system. The Nefesh HaBahamis wants to run the body the way that it wants, and the Nefesh HaElokis is fighting to commandeer the Nefesh HaBahamis, to get the Nefesh HaBahamis to manage the body the way that the Nefesh HaElokis wants the Nefesh HaBahamis to manage the body. That's what it actually looks like. Wrong is a very strong word. It may or may not be. Chassidus talks very clearly about the fact that sometimes things in the body that are, let's say, not running in a way that is most desirable, sometimes it could be because of an issue in the body, sometimes it can be because of an issue in the Nefesh HaBahamis, sometimes it could be both.
How could it, so what would it mean if the Nefesh HaBahamis is the force of the body, but it's not an actual body?
The Nefesh HaBahamis is not the body is the body.
But if the force is what keeps it alive.
Yes.
So it has to be connected to every part of the body.
It's connected to every part of the body. Let's say, for example, I don't know if anyone here is like a computer nerd. I'm guessing that most likely no one here has ever built their own computer, right? When you need a computer or a laptop, you go online, you go to whatever website, Dell or whoever, and you order a computer and it comes, or you go to the store and you buy it, and it comes ready to go. You turn it on and you start using it. If you build your own computer from scratch, if you buy all the hardware and you put it together, when you put everything together and you turn it on, there's nothing to do, right? Because there's no operating system on the computer. You have to get Windows. You turn it on, literally nothing happens. There's nothing going on. You have to get an operating system, the software, load it onto the computer, and then once you do that, you can start using the computer, whether it's Windows or a Mac operating system, whatever it is. So you have hardware and software. Now, if you have, for example, a virus on a computer, right? Or if there is a fault in the software, I mean, very simple. I'm guessing that many of you could relate to this experience, maybe not. It used to happen more than it happens lately for a number of reasons, partly because we think of our phones as being disposable, but relatively. But sometimes a person's having an issue with their phone, and then you contact, whether it's Apple or Samsung or whoever it is, and they say, we need to run diagnostics to figure out is it a hardware issue or a software issue, right? So you can describe the problem. Sometimes that symptom can show up. Your phone mechanically is perfectly fine, but there's a bug in the software. Sometimes you could have the exact same system, the software is fine, but something broke or there's some damage in the hardware. So now the software, the operating system, is how the hardware runs. And if you have a phone without an operating system, without iOS or Android operating system, it's not going to do anything. You're going to turn it on and there's just going to be a screen and nothing happening. Right? Because the hardware has to have an operating system with which to operate. Now you can have a defect in the operating system could produce a symptom without anything wrong with the hardware, or a defect in the hardware could potentially produce the exact same symptom with nothing wrong in the software. Right? So the guf and the nefesh habahamis is kind of like that. Just a body without a nefesh habahamis is meat. It's a cadaver. It's a body. The body and the nefesh habahamis together is a person. Functionally, in terms of the person, you can't separate between them. You can't separate between the body and the soul practically, because everything that happens is a combination of guf and nefesh habahamis. Every thought is a combination of the brain and the nefesh habahamis. Every action is a combination of body and nefesh habahamis. Every sensation, every experience, everything, right? So you can't separate between them because they're intertwined inextricably in practice. But it's possible that there could be something wrong with one or the other, and either one would be enough to produce an outcome without something having to be wrong with the other one. Does that make sense? So the Nefesh HaBahamis is not the guf. The Nefesh HaBahamis is the non-physical entity that partners with the body to make it actually be alive and functional. Now, throughout everything in the body, and Chassidus talks about this, continuing along that same vein, when we think, it's one of the things that, what? No, we're going to leave that. We'll be here all week. But when we think, you can measure the electrical activity in the brain, right? Thought physically happens in the brain. There is a physical electrical activity, and electrical activity also isn't some fluffy woo-woo thing. It's the movement of potassium ions in and out of nerve cells, which creates an electric charge, and that electric charge moves along the nerve cell, along the nerve, the axon, the long part of the nerve cell. You can measure that, literally. You just put some sensors on a person's head. You can measure, you can get a person to think about different things, recall memories, smells, tastes, seeing things, and you'll see different parts of the brain are lighting up. It's physical electrical activity. It's a physical thing. At the same time, the experience isn't a tangible physical thing. It's an intangible thing that the person experiences, the thought. It's a phenomenon. And the thought is a result of the thought, the experience, the idea it occurs both in the brain and in the Nefesh HaBahamis. Right? Together. Without a brain, there can't be a thought, and without a Nefesh HaBahamis, it's not a living brain, it's just brain tissue. So they can't be separated. When we walk, let's say, keeping it relatively simple, our legs do the walking. You have to have leg bones, you have to have thigh muscles and calf muscles and body muscles to move, so you can move those joints and walk. And you also have to have a Nefesh HaBahamis that makes the body alive, and what's referred to in Chassidus as koyach hahiluch shebenefesh, this intangible force in the nefesh which confers on the body and the legs the ability to walk. Now, if there is damage to the physical legs, that could affect someone's ability to walk. If there is a defect or a deficit or damage in the koyach hahiluch shebenefesh, that could impair someone's ability to walk, even if there's nothing wrong with the legs. They go together. They're inseparable practically in function. Now, it's more specific than that, right? Because every single person in here has a body that's very different to every other person's body. And that's at many levels, right? Our genes are different. Every one of us has a unique set of genes. We have the same number of chromosomes generally, and the overwhelming majority of our genetic material is identical, but a couple of changes, there's many changes across the room, but the actual percentage of our genetic material that's different is a tiny amount. Most of it's just identical to each other. But those differences are enough to make a big difference. So genetically, we're different to each other. Physiologically, we're different to each other. So our bodies are very different in a number of ways. Our brains are different to each other. Our nervous systems, our height, our eyes, our hair, everything about us is different at the level of our bodies. The same thing is true of our Nefesh HaBahamis, and the Nefesh HaBahamis is designed to partner with the body. So each of us has a body that's different to every other body that has ever existed in human history. Every single one of us has a set of genetic material that is different to every other set of genetic material that has ever existed in human history. Every one of us has a Nefesh HaBahamis that is also equivalently, in the same way, unique and different to every other Nefesh HaBahamis that has ever existed in human history. And also, just one more thing to clarify. When the term Nefesh HaBahamis, this is a very fundamental thing. The term Nefesh HaBahamis when we talk about it as an animal soul, it's not, the intent here is not pejorative. It's not like, it's animal. It's very practically, and in this sense, we talk about in Chakira, Jewish, in Torah philosophy, in Chassidus, we talk about the four categories, Domin, Sameach, Chaim, Adara, right? There are animals and people, and it's not the same category. At the same time, in a sense, the same way that a biologist generally would look at as a human being as just being one of the many species of animals, on one hand, it's categorically separate, al pi Torah, there's Chai and Medaber. At the same time, in contrast to the Nefesh Elikis, the Nefesh HaBahamis is called the animal soul because at the end of the day, we are just, as a human being, we are effectively a human animal, a Homo sapiens species animal. The Nefesh HaBahamis, the animal soul, just means, and Chassidus talks about the fact that, it says that a human being has a human animal soul. A horse has a horse body and a horse Nefesh HaBahamis. A cow has a cow body and a cow Nefesh HaBahamis. This idea of Nefesh HaBahamis is not unique to humans. Every single behema, every single animal has a guf behemi, an animal body, and a Nefesh HaBahamis, an animal soul. And the animal soul is quite literally just the life force and the non-tangible, non-physical component of that animal. As humans, we have the same thing. Nefesh HaBahamis is very simply, it's the non-physical component of who we are as a human being. It's that non-physical, that life force that makes the body be alive and that brings character and personality in partnership with the body, right? When we say this, when we say that our nefesh, there's the koiches of Chochmah bin Adas and the nefesh affect the way we think, that's not saying it's not really the brain, it's really the nefesh. No. It's both. They work together. That's how this works. So every one of us has a brain that's different. Every one of us has genes that are different. Every one of us has a nefesh habahamis that's different. The chokhmah of every nefesh habahamis is different, and the bina is different, and the das and the chesed and the gvura, etc., etc. So there are multiple components, and the same is true of nefesh elikis. When each of us was born, it's not like, there were a bunch of babies that were, at let's say 8 months and 29 days, or 39 weeks and 6 days, let's be more precise, of pregnancy. And then let's say hypothetically that all babies are born at 40 weeks, just for the sake of keeping it simple. And, and then it's the next morning and Hashem says, I've got these, I've got these 40 neshamas that have to go into the world today. There are 40, babies that are coming to term today. Just here, let's take these neshamas, just scatter them around. Well, one, you take a body, you take a body, you take a body, you take a body, you take a body. That's not the way it works. It's not random. Every neshama is partnered with the same way that every nefesh habahamis, every animal soul, every life force is partnered with a body that it was designed to partner with. The body is custom designed for a specific purpose, a specific mission, a specific role. The Nefesh HaBahamis is custom designed for that same role, and those designs obviously are going to match. And the same is true of the Nefesh Elikis. Every Nefesh Elikis is specifically designed with specific, unique Koyach HaChochma that's different to every other Nefesh Elikis, and a Koyach HaBina that's different to every other Nefesh Elikis, and a Koyach HaDas, and Chesed, and Gvur, etc. So every guf is unique and different to every other one, intentionally, for a purpose, for a reason. The same is true of every Nefesh HaBahamis, the same is true of every Nefesh Elikis. And all of them come together in one individual. They're partnered together. They have the same uniquenesses or uniquenesses that are equivalent and a match for each other to come together into the world to achieve something specific. At every layer of who we are, we're different to everyone else. Now, we are Chassidus Chabad. I know I've talked about this not so long ago. I am thinking, I don't remember specifically, but I'm guessing we probably talked about this at the Farbrengen a few weeks ago. In a sense, Chassidus Chabad Chassidus is misunderstood because of the name. Right, so we have the Mizritcha Magid, the foremost Talmud and the successor of the Baal Shem Tov. Then among the Mizritcha Magid, among his students, he had many students who were very big, real tzaddikim. And all of them took one approach, and the Alter Rebbe took a categorically different approach. By categorically different, I mean it's not just more or less, it's in a different category of its own, different to all the rest. There are two categories, the Alter Rebbe, and then all his contemporaries, all the other Talmidim. And what was that difference? That difference is that even just from the Alter Rebbe, we have more Sforim of Chassidus than every other Chassidus combined. And then we have all the other Mitler and the Tzemach Tzedek, etc. We have an enormous amount of chassidus, of things, of material to learn and understand. Why? Because it's Chabad. The Alter Rebbe wanted us to understand as much as possible. This is not because the Alter Rebbe wanted us to be academics or to know a lot. As far as the Alter Rebbe is concerned, bottom line, who cares? What difference does it make? Does it make anything about a person or their life more valuable if they know more? Technically, no. That being said, there is something that is very important to the Alter Rebbe, which is what? What's the thing the Alter Rebbe cares about most? I would say two things. The ultimate objective is Sefer Shel Beinanim. The Alter Rebbe, the thing that's the most bottom line important, at least in terms of Dir B'Tachtonim and our Avodas Hashem, in, let's say, the simplest way of looking at it, is how we show up in the world, our behavior. The reality is, it's true that there's Me'ach Shalat Halev, etc., but the reality is that our behavior is primarily driven by the way we feel, by our experience. So the Alter Rebbe cares about our experience. The Alter Rebbe wants every one of us to love Hashem. Now, I'm assuming everyone here can relate to the fact, can picture, can recall a phenomenon of feeling very, very deep and powerful love towards someone. And when it's a really deep and powerful love, you physically feel it. It's a feeling. Right? And Hayom Yom says, the Rebbe says in Hayom Yom that the mitzvahs of Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, the Rebbe says the shiur, the amount that you have to love Hashem in order to be Yotze, right? If you want to be Yotze Kiddush, there's an amount you have to drink, and Challah, there's an amount you have to eat, and every mitzvah has an amount. What's the amount you have to love Hashem in order to fulfill it properly? The Rebbe says, to the point that you feel a physical sensation in your body, a physical sensation of love. You feel it in your body, physical sensation. That's what the Alter Rebbe wanted us to have. Now, we can have physical sensations as a result of someone inspiring us and getting us all hyped up. How long does that ever last? Minutes, hours, days, maybe weeks, months. If you're super lucky, very rarely it's going to last anything like that's going to last anywhere near that long. But invariably, it's a matter of time. Why? Because we're riding the wave. The expression riding the wave, where does that come from? It comes from surfing. In surfing, you ride a wave. You get on a surfboard, you catch the wave. So if the wave's coming, you've got to get on your board right ahead of the wave. And if you get the timing and your mechanics and everything just right, you ride the wave. You stay on the front end of the wave, and as the wave pushes, it pushes you. And because you're riding the wave, what happens? Eventually, the wave stops. It's over. And then you keep going for a bit until that momentum wears out, and then you stop because you're riding the wave. When the wave stops, you stop a little bit downstream. So if we are excited and we feel things about Hashem because someone else inspired us, we're riding their inspiration, that will wear off, and when it does, our feeling will wear off. So the Alter Rebbe wants every one of us to be able to actually feel it in our body, feel it in our gut, a physical sensation of love for Hashem, a physical sensation of awe of Hashem. That our relationship with Hashem should be a real human experience, an experience of human emotion towards Hashem, that you feel it. I would say in a sense there are two parts to why that's Chabad. I say this loosely and with caution and, hope that I don't burn for too long for saying this, but in a sense, the Alter Rebbe couldn't care less how much we know. That's not the main point. The Alter Rebbe cares that we should be able to have our own relationship with Hashem where we have Avas Hashem, where we love Hashem and we are in awe of Hashem to the point that we feel it. There's only one way to get there. There's only one way for that to be something that's real, to the point that we feel it. And that it's real and it's sustainable and it's not just riding the wave and it's going to disappear in a matter of minutes or hours or days. And that is to become informed about Hashem. The more we know, the more we understand, that will start to shape our perception and our perspective, which will shape our feelings. It will shape the way we feel towards Hashem. The only way into my feelings, the only way for me to actually feel in my body love for Hashem that's real and that's not riding someone else's wave, is to go through my head. The only way to get into every one of your bodies, for you to feel in your body love for Hashem, is to go through your head. And that's for two reasons. Number one, because your head is where your perspective happens. So your perspective is going to be shaped by what you know and understand individually. And number two, your brain is designed to go with your body. The Chachma bin Adas of your Nefesh HaBahamis are designed to go together with your brain. The Chachma bin Adas of your Nefesh Elokis are different to everyone else's, and they are designed to pair with the Chachma bin Adas of your Nefesh HaBahamis, which are different to everyone else's, both of which are designed to pair with your brain, which is different to everybody else's. And all of those are designed to partner with your body and your emotional profile. So if we are going to have a real sensory love for Hashem that we feel in our bodies, and the Rebbe says that that's the shear for it to be proper, is that we feel a physical sensation. The only way we can have that is if Hashem is real to us. Now, what that means for each of us is going to be different, because we have different bodies, different brains, different Nefesh HaBahamis, different Nefesh Elokis. That's not a bug. The fact that if all of us are going to describe, let's say, if every one of us would remember the most powerful moment of love we ever felt towards someone in the world. And let's say, assuming we all had an equally powerful moment of feeling love at some point in our lives. If we would all describe it, if we would describe it in a line or two, probably the description is going to sound pretty similar in terms of describing what it feels like. But if we would write a paragraph or 2 pages, a long and detailed description, every person's experience of what love feels like is a little different. And it's supposed to be. Because we are different. We are different people, and everything about us is different. We have different genetics, different anatomy, different physiology, different Nefesh HaBahamis, different midas, different seichel in Nefesh HaBahamis, different midas and seichel in Nefesh Elokis. Everything about us is different, and it's supposed to be. So what Avas Hashem feels like for each one of us is different. And every one of us has the Chachma bin Adas in our Nefesh Elokis and in our Nefesh HaBahamis, and the brain and the nervous system and the body, that is, all of which are going to come together to produce the specific instance or experience of sensory love for Hashem that we are supposed to have. The only way to get there is to use our own minds. Even if I could, let's say hypothetically, maybe it's not hypothetical for so long, Elon Musk maybe, with Neuralink. I'll find someone who learns lots of Chassidus, and they learn lots more Chassidus than me, and they understand it more deeply than me, and I can just download their understanding of Chassidus into my brain. It's not going to have the same effect for me that it has for them, because that's their understanding with their brain that's designed to go with their body, and that's going to produce the Avos Hashem the way it's supposed to be for them. Every one of us has a maybe subtly but intentionally different experience of what love is. And for that to be real, we have to learn about Hashem with our own minds, so that our perception of Hashem is something that was developed using the Chachma bin Adas and the brain that were designed to partner with this body. And so because the Alter Rebbe wants every one of us to have our own real sensory love for Hashem that we feel in our bodies, that it should be something that's not just there when we have a moment of inspiration, but something that is deeply meaningful and a real part of our life. The only way to have that in a way that's real is if we use our own mind to learn as much as possible about Hashem and understand it as much as possible. When we do that with our own mind, that's going to produce a perception that is the result of our individual mind, which is going to be the perception that's going to result in the Avos Hashem that we're supposed to have. And the point of all of this, and where I'm going and why I'm, talking about this and getting so deeply into it, is because I think there's way too much of wanting to conform, wanting to resemble. Oh, that person's Avos Hashem looks like this, so I want to try to, learn enough Chassidus and do the Avodas Hashem and Avodas Tefillah so that my Avos Hashem is going to look like that. It's like, if that was the point, Hashem just sort of press Control C, Control V, copy, paste, and paste, 15 million, and if that's how many Yidden there are today, and that's what we would have had. That defeats the whole purpose. I think there's a lot of, as we talk about it, but fear to really accept the fact that every one of us is unique. Every one of us is different. And when we learn the same Chassidus and we put in the same effort and we understand it to the same extent, it's the actual perception is going to be a little different, likely, inevitably. And what that sensation of love for Hashem will be that results is going to be a little different from person to person. Why? Because we're supposed to be different. And the way that we are supposed to show up in the world is supposed to be different. Right? Every one of us has a different set of talents. Every one of us has a different set of strengths, a different set of challenges, a different set of gifts. Challenges, talents, all of which are gifts. Every one of us is custom designed to offer and to bring to the world something different to everyone else in the world combined. And that goes together with the fact that our sensory experience of love for Hashem is also supposed to be unique. Which means that we are supposed to learn about Hashem ourselves, understand it ourselves. If someone else's understanding is a little bit deeper, but I'm learning and I'm doing the work and this is how it's going, then that means that's how it's supposed to be going. And if someone else's sensation of love for Hashem is different to mine, okay, and we're all going to have different sensations of everything. There's nothing to be afraid of. And that goes together with the fact, again, that there's nothing to be afraid of if we have different things that excite us, different things that make us feel alive, because we're supposed to be different. And if we were all supposed to have the same exact things that make us feel alive, the same exact things that we bring to the world, then we wouldn't need to have different minds and different bodies, and we wouldn't have to learn Chassidus for ourselves in order to have a real sensory experience of love for Hashem. It could have just all been cookie cutter and the same for everyone, and you just flip a switch. But it's not supposed to be like that. We're supposed to be different. What Avos Hashem feels like is supposed to be different, and that's why we have to use our own minds to get there. Because only your mind is going to produce the perception that is designed to go with your body and your emotional profile. And all of that is designed to go together with the unique set of talents, of gifts, of excitements, of passions, of interests that Hashem put together in your body and in your brain, in your nervous system, in your nefesh habahamis, in your nefesh elokis. All of this, if we were supposed to show up the same, there'd be no need for Chassidus Chabad. We could have just done the cookie cutter thing and we all ride the same wave. But the point is, if we all ride the same wave, we all show up the same way, that defeats the whole purpose. We're supposed to show up differently. Of course, the fundamentals are the same, and this is not saying that I get to just pick and choose what I do or how I do it to whatever degree I want, obviously. But within halacha and hidurim and minhagim and all of those things, there's so much variation that's possible. And Chassidus talks about the beauty of variation, the beauty of complexity. Tiferes. Tiferes is beauty. Why? Because it's chesed and gvura together. You have two very different things. Opposites, they come together. And the beauty you get when you have different things contrasting in combination is on a whole different category to however beautiful something can possibly be on its own. The Alter Rebbe took this approach because we are supposed to have our own experience of love for Hashem that's different to everyone else's, which means we have to get there with our own mind that's different to everyone else's. That's true of the brain, of the seichel of nefesh habahamis, seichel of nefesh elokis. because every one of us is supposed to be showing up in the world differently, equally properly, equally correctly, but how that's going to look is going to be different. And it's something that we really need to not be afraid of. And if the way it looks around us is like no one else is getting that memo, it can take a lot of courage, but it doesn't mean that it's not the right thing. It just means that someone's going to be Nachshon ben Aminadov. Someone's going to have the courage to say, I am going to do full halacha, hidurim, minhagim, the whole works, but you know what? I'm going to look for and find those things in me, that make me, that make me not everyone else. And I'm going to show up in Torah and in mitzvahs and in Divrei Tachtonim with all of those things. And if it wasn't supposed to be that way, we wouldn't need Chabad Chassidus. So that's Yud Tes Kislev in a nutshell for today.